Okay, welcome to our third podcast in our series on ecology. And this podcast, we are now going to move on to talk about the ecology at the level of the community. What we're talking about when we address an ecological community. Okay, let me just skip this and go back to this little image real quick, and then we'll go back and define it. Remember our levels of biological organization. We start with the individual to the population. Well, we are going to be right here at the community level, where we've come down and away from the ecosystem level to talk about basically solely the living things, all the different species of living things that are within a given ecosystem. So the owls, the whatever that is, cougar, moose, the pine and spruce trees, the grasses, everything that's alive, different species. Okay? So a community is defined as all the different organisms, all the different species of organisms that are living together in one place. We're looking at a fantastic community in this picture of African savanna type animals and plants. When we study organisms at the level of the community, ecosystems at the level of community, we are really looking at how different populations of different species interact with each other. So these are referred to generally as interspecific reactions. If you think about interstate, 60, or let's do 95. 95, that can take you from here to Maryland to Pennsylvania to New York. Interstate. So interspecific is between species. The interstate takes you between different states. So that's perhaps how you can kind of keep that clear in your mind. Now, there are many different ways in which different species can interact with each other. Okay, most notably competition. They can compete with each other if they are similar in the needs they require, the types of food or the types of places to live. They might compete for resources. Predation. One species may predate on another. A lynx may eat a rabbit, for example. And we'll talk about that. And also there are symbiotic relationships. Please understand what this word means and what it encompasses. Symbiotic means a very close relationship. A close relationship between organisms that are of a different species. Okay? So it doesn't necessarily say whether this relationship is good or bad, beneficial or not. It just means that it is a very close relationship, and we'll talk about that. So another concept that is going to kind of overarch through all of this is the concept of coevolution, and we probably need to talk a little bit about what that means as well. Coevolution, if I can get my, is when one species experiences evolutionary change, adaptation, new adaptation in response to something that has happened in another species with which it interacts. So the definition here, evolution, adaptation of one species in response to adaptations that have appeared in another species with which no doubt it must interact. So for example, predator-prey is really easy to think about this with. If you are a plant that is getting eaten by herbivores, then natural selection would favor an adaptation in you, a change in you that made you not taste so good to herbivores anymore, because then you'd get to live, then you'd get to reproduce more, and your genes for that new trait would get passed on to your children, and they would get to live and wouldn't get eaten, and so on. Chili peppers. Though we love them, we think they're spicy and great, or at least some of us do, are very distasteful to most animals. And so this is an adaptation to help this chili plant not get eaten. However, if you are an animal that develops a taste or an ability to endure the hot sensation of those chili peppers, like we have, then you have co-evolved with that, and now you can eat that. And so now, if that plant is going to survive to its same level, it's going to have to evolve a new trick, a new adaptation to try to discourage you from eating it. So, prey defenses often cause predators to either adapt to those new defenses or die. Simple as that. Also, all forms of symbiosis, mutualism, commensalism, parasitism. We'll talk about all three, but all forms of those are coevolution. This is a fly. I think he looks like a bee, but he is, I believe, truly a fly. And this, I believe, orchid, it's certainly a flower, they have co-evolved. This guy clearly has a proboscis that is specially designed to enter into this flower, and he will pollinate this flower. In return, he will get nectar. This animal and this plant have co-evolved to work together. The fly gets food, the plant gets pollinated, and so on. So coevolution, very important concept to think of. All right, so three major types of interspecific interactions that we can talk about. First, competition. This is usually most severe between members of the same species, because if you are a member, if you're all polar bears, then you're all competing for the same kind of food, the same shelter, same mates, same everything. So interspecific competition is probably less competitive than between members of the exact same species, but nonetheless it does exist. Okay, it is particularly an important factor when the species are similar and they are occupying a similar or the same area. They are living in the same place, and they have similar needs. Okay, you should be aware of this concept. It's called competitive exclusion, and basically what it says is you can never have two different species, occupying exactly the same niche, because species are different, one of them will always be a little bit better at that niche than the other one, and it will get outcompeted. So competitive exclusion says that one species, if they are in the same niche, two species are in the same niche, one of them will always outcompete the other, and the other will just not make it. So, this is an example of barnacles growing, let's say, on a rock. Here's the high tide and here's the low tide mark. And essentially what this is showing is that if this is the only barnacle in the game, this particular little species of barnacle, it will grow all the way from the high tide line all the way down to the low tide line, and it is happy in all of this habitat. But if another species called, well, whatever that's called, if another species is introduced, this particular species is just better adapted to this low tide region than this first species is. If this second species is present, it will always outcompete the first for this low tide region. They can't exist in the same exact niche. This one is going to be better than that one. Conversely, this one must be better than this guy at the high tide line portion. So when there's nobody else to compete, this guy does really well, but when we introduce this competitor, he's better adapted for this low tide mark. He competitively excludes this guy from this area of the shoreline. Okay? This idea of similar species but different, occupying very nearby niches but slightly different ones, is called resource partitioning. Okay, this little signpost here says a ghost of competition past. These are all different species of an old lizard. I thought that I had a picture. There's one, and I think there's another one. Little lizards, and they are all the same genus, okay? All the same genus. And you can see that because the first letter in the scientific name, they're all the same. I can't remember what the genus name is, but they are all the same genus, but they are all different species. And as they competed and tried to vie for they all clearly live in the same area. It turns out that, well, this one species, maybe it's this guy, is very adept at living in the tree canopy, whereas another species, maybe this guy, is very adept at living close to the ground, and others occupy different niches, all within the same environment. This is referred to as little micro habitats, and what they have done is they've kind of partitioned the resources. They've said, okay, I'm going to take the canopy, you take the roots, and you take the bushes, and you take this area over here, and they have adapted very specifically to very, very specific microhabitats. All the species get to survive and pass their genes on to the next generation, but they have partitioned out the resources. This guy has competitively excluded this guy from living up at the canopy. Conversely, this guy has competitively excluded this guy from living down in the lower parts of the trees. Okay, so resource partitioning often happens as the end result of competition for resources, and those species that are going to survive can kind of specialize into certain microhabitats. Okay. All right. Predation. Let's talk about predator-prey. Predation is a big driver of coevolution. Okay, we've already mentioned this. Predators have adaptations that help them locate and subdue prey. They're either very excellent divers from the air or stalkers from the ground, and they are quiet and they have excellent vision and they can locate and kill prey items. Prey items, on the other hand, have many adaptations that allow them to elude their predators and defend themselves, like horns or thorns, or, as we already talked about, the spicy hot chilies and all of that. Predation provides a very, very strong selection pressure on both prey and predator. If you do not adapt to catch your prey, your neighbor does, then you're going to lose out. They're going to get the prey items and you won't. If you do not adapt to avoid being eaten, you're going to lose out. So there's a very, very strong pressure from natural selection for prey items to avoid getting eaten and for predators to get them anyway. Okay? All right, we need to talk about symbiosis. Okay? There are three major types of symbiotic interactions. Okay? Remember, this just means in general a very close relationship between different species. Okay? Parasitism is a interaction in which one member of this relationship is harmed while the other is benefited. Okay, as we see here, this is shoot, I can't think of the name of this particular wasp at the moment, but it lays its eggs on a particular type of caterpillar, and those eggs then grow on that caterpillar, and eventually when they hatch they eat the caterpillar. It's a form of parasitism. Honestly, you could call it also a form of predation, but here's another form of parasitism. The tick is a parasite on the dog. The dog obviously is getting the worst end of this bargain. There is some horrifying looking, they don't look like ticks, insects that have attached themselves to the body of this poor little baby bird. Now, mutualism, on the other hand, both species benefit from this relationship. Both species. In this case, these cattle egrets are eating parasites, insects, and things off of the oxen, and so the oxen get cleaned, the birds get food, and everybody benefits. Lichens. You should know what a lichen is. It's a really important organism in terms of biology. It is a mutualistic organism. It is a mutualistic relationship between an algae and a fungus, and these are all different lichens that are growing on this tree. We see these pale green ones a lot here. The algae can do photosynthesis, thus it can make sugar. Fungus can't do photosynthesis, so the algae gives the fungus food. The fungus in turn gives the algae a place to live. The algae is living inside the tissues of the fungus, so they are mutually benefiting from this relationship. Commensalism is when one organism in the relationship benefits while the other is simply unaffected. Okay, the barnacles are what you are seeing. There's a whole huge patch of barnacles here and here and here and here and all along on this whale. Evidently, studies have been done. The barnacles, I find it hard to believe, but really the barnacles appear to have no effect on the whale whatsoever. And so the whale's like, whatever. But the barnacles get a benefit. They have a place to live. They may be able to pick up food that filters by as the whale is on his own search for food, and so on. So, big benefit. So let's look at this. What relationship do we have here? Anybody know what these guys are? These, of course, are little ants. This is an acacia tree that is in Africa, I believe, and the tree literally provides these ants with food. These are little packets that the ants will harvest of food, starch, sugar, and it also provides these ants with homes. These thorns are hollow, and the ants have colonies in here and bunches of babies, and so they will carry the food packets into their little home. So the tree is providing pretty much everything that these ants need. What do the ants give back to the tree? They give back to the tree a very powerful defense mechanism. If anything else, insect, whatever, tries to eat this plant, the ants will swarm it and attack it and kill it. Definitely a mutualistic. This is a mutualistic mutualism between the ants and the acacia tree. The ants provide defense to keep the tree from getting eaten, and the acacia tree provides the ants with food and shelter. Okay. If we look at this, this is another example of, what do you think? Looks like mutualism again. The birds again look like they are cleaning the antelope or whatever that is and getting the insects off of it, and the antelope's getting cleaned, the birds are getting food. Everybody wins. What's that relationship? Clearly I'm stuck in a rut because this is mutualism. Okay, in this case the bee gets nectar and the flower gets pollinated as the bee carries the pollen from one flower to the next. So again, they both benefit. This one, once again, mutualism. The whole slide seems to be mutualistic. In this case, the clownfish keeps the sea anemone clean. It nips away at anything that might be trying to grow on it or whatever. And the sea anemone, on the other hand, gives the clownfish protection because the sea anemone is a stinging animal and will sting anything else. But the clownfish is adapted to that, so it doesn't get hurt. Okay. All right, that's it. Please remember about coevolution and all the different types of symbiosis and competition and predation. That's it. Thanks for watching. Catch you in the next podcast.